okay, a number of bills, an earlier one and some other two, including the recent LGBTQ, how do you call it, the bill, you know, seeking to institute, you know, family sexual values bill, you know, and so that is the source of worry. Parliament feels that the executive have actually written officially to indicate the president's inability to be able to assent to the bill to officially make it a law. And the circumstances doesn't seem to, you know, excite Parliament. And this has raised a number of legality. Our responsibility, therefore, will be to interrogate the laws of it, the legality of the positions of the two, and hope that in the advices we shall pass, persuasive as they may be, they will influence a way out for the nation in this. So the fundamental issue we should even be asking is whether or not, if a bill is raised by Parliament, or if Parliament seeks to pass a particular law, whether any other arm of government have got the responsibility to be able to stop it. For me, as a student of law and keen in legal issues, this is a critical matter we should be interrogating. Now, how did we arrive at the interrelationship between the presidency, which is the executive, and the parliamentary system, which is the legislative arm of government? Basically, we know that we have three arms of government arising from the, you know, whole concept of separation of powers. Montesquieu actually propounded a belief that for purposes of checks and balances, there should be what? The distribution of political power along these three strands: the legislation, the executive, and the judiciary. If you are minded to go into his corpus of knowledge in this regard, espoused in The Spirit of Law, published in 1748, the year 1748, you understand that the factual basis for this whole concept of separation of powers is to allow for a certain equitable distribution of political power and to create room for checks and balances so that no other arm of government takes undue advantage of power, you know, to arbitrarily administer the republic. Good enough. Now, in that conception, you realize that the legislature or the legislative arm, beyond just ordinary distribution of power, enjoys what we call parliamentary supremacy or legislative supremacy, espousing the, you know, sovereignty of Parliament, and actually stating emphatically that of all the arms of government, Parliament stands tall, and in its decision-making issues of laws, no other arm of government should seek or can seek to undermine or stop what Parliament is doing. So this is the fundamental legal position. It is also the fundamental position even in the political sciences. Now, so what is happening in Ghana today very much takes foundations in this particular principle. So the question arising is, does the executive have the position on any grounds at all to stop any bill, including the ones on the table now? That is the particular issue we should be discussing. Now, if we allow for that to happen, what are the consequences actually for future body of laws that Parliament will seek to build? We are being told that these bills cannot be approved or given presidential assent. Why? Because some suits have been filed against them. And these suits or legal actions instigated are directed at placing injunctions on the ability of the president to be able to proceed to assent his signature to the bill to make it a law. Now, my brother, Parliament, with its powers of legislative supremacy, okay, have got three unique characteristics. One, the first characteristic of parliamentary supremacy espouses that it should be the sole body with the right to actually enact and promulgate laws. That is number one. And number two, that the activities or legislative proceedings of what? Or law-making activity of one parliament cannot seek to be binding on a future parliament. In other words, if the 7th parliament had made a law, it cannot make a provision that the current 8th parliament cannot amend or change it. A future parliament has what it takes to be able to cause an amendment or even a change overall of what? Of a previous or a law made by a previous parliament as it deems fit. And number three, which I want to predicate my argument on, is the fact that the judiciary or no law made by parliament can be set aside or stopped or revoked by what? By any court. And the court here is talking to the judiciary. So now, that principle is explicit that an act, not a bill, okay? That principle is clear that an act made by parliament. So it means that even before the law, courts will have the authority to be able to do anything about it, there is that right for it to proceed from a bill into becoming a law. And nothing should stop the president from what? From actually citing or signing or accenting to it. But that is where we are now. The whole debate, Bless, will now be, does a mere application for injunction in court carry the real legal gravamen to be able to actually stop the president from accepting to it, to these bills? To answer this question, we must go back to even the principles of injunction in law. The very jurisprudence of it gives us two dominating schools of thought. The first is that once there is an application for injunction, okay, on a matter, in the interest of fairness and to be able to allow the court to have a choice between legality, okay, or the law and equitable remedies, the parties involved should be stopped from any furtherance of whatsoever activity that has formed the basis for which the, injunction has been sought for. That is one. Another school of thought says that no, until there is a real judgment on the matter and an injunction is granted, why should you stop anybody? Let the parties proceed as they think fit, unless their performance of same is of such magnitude as one that will cause a damage which even an eventual judgment cannot repair. And that brings us to the principle of irreparable damages, or the irreparability rule that governs this sphere of law. And I know the senior lawyers here will actually do a lot more justice to it, maybe from the perspective of case law. But if that is the case, why have some people chosen to decide that, okay, and this is the president deciding that, okay, I'm not going to actually sign to give assent to their bills on the basis of this, meaning that it is fair to conclude that he may have been thinking along the lines of the first school of thought, that thinks that signing it ahead of the ruling may create a situation the ruling cannot repair. But then, the critical question to ask is, what damage will the passing of the bill into an act actually cause? Of a high gravity that, should the ruling even shows that there is something fundamentally wrong with the law and it probably undermines the basic rights of some group of people, there cannot be a reversal, given that the current parliament can still preside over amending it and correcting it and making sure it aligns with whatever advice that may come. Remember that whatever advice the court will even give still lies in the bosom of parliament as the sole legal authority to make laws, to do so, to implement. I do not see it, Bless, at all. I do not see an irreparable damage. And in the absence of an irreparable damage in the present proceeding to assent to the bill, what actually stops us? Nothing. So we are creating a situation that if care is not taken, a precedent, and an unholy one for that matter, will actually be established, such that in the future, any law Parliament seeks to pass, any individual can just get up and quickly go and take an injunction against it. Are you beginning to see what that can do? It will actually embolden people to every step of the way go to court to seek an injunction against parliamentary bills or laws. Can you have a situation where, or imagine it, where you have business people running to court that no, let us place an injunction on the president's ability to assent a bill, okay, if that bill ostensibly is bringing on board fiscal policies that they think, though good for the state, may affect their business. And remember that in a property-owning democracy, economic rights are also what? Fundamental to human existence. Do you know what that will mean? Do you know what that will mean? If there is a law seeking to actually give impetus for certain class of dangerous criminal activities to society, be clamped down. A group of criminals can actually sponsor, right, a court issue or legal proceedings to actually dictate that, look, nobody, the court should stop president from assenting to the bill Parliament has passed to it. That's the kind of a situation we have found ourselves in. So I think that, look, we should be very careful. And these tricks that are at play, or let me call it a game, that is between the legislative arm of government and the executive arm of parliament, that have automatically dragged in the judiciary, especially at a time people have problems even with the social reputation of the judiciary as not being too fair, and they're always playing and dancing to the tune of the pipers in a ruling class, should be a cause of worry. And I think that even now, the judiciary in itself will be brought to a huge conflict in either passing a judgment that will support the position of the presidency or that will support the position of parliament. For this reason, and for this education, it is therefore crucial that, look, the matter be considered. It is needless to have the executive and parliament doing what they are both doing at this point. I don't believe in two wrongs actually making a right. My appeal then will be that, can parliament proceed to actually judge how do you convert the nominees? We can actually approve the nominees if there are bases to approve them, without necessarily making it look as though parliament is actually paying back a bad coin just because a bad product has been handed it. That, for me, is also something that is not right. So yes, the presidency should look at the issue. Well, I don't think a mere application for injunction should stop them, given that I don't see any room for any irreparable damage being caused by the president's act of signing it. Again, I don't also see any much meaning in Parliament's decision not to approve the nominees. We need the nominees to be approved to run government business in the interest of the same country that Parliament is seeking to pass these laws to protect. This shall be my submission on the matter.
Right, thank you very much. Now let me move straight to Kwame Osudanso.
Right. Let me also say a special good morning to our viewers, and for the opportunity to sit with Honorable Eunice Afuseni, as well as Elvis Butta. And there's no gainsaying the fact that we share the same birthday. And on Saturday, I believe he will take me out so that he can spoil me small. It's been a while since I celebrated my birthday. I don't usually celebrate it because I think it's a no-brainer. Well, I mean, I start on all fours with most of the submissions eloquently put forward by Elvis Butta, particularly with the definitions and description, characterization and particularization of the various arms of government. It is important to state that in this country we practice an executive system of governance. What that means is that the president, who is the leader or the head of the executive, wields so much powers granted him by the Constitution. And so the president can appoint, the president can disappoint, the president can appoint people to some very crucial state institutions. The president can appoint people to head the judiciary. The president can appoint people to head the security agencies. So the president really, in my estimation, has unfettered powers in respect of executing his mandate as the leader of government. So that must be established. And therefore, it is well within the president's right to appoint ministers, to disappoint ministers, in the event that these ministers are not performing to the best of their abilities, and they are not performing in a manner that, in the president's estimation, does not agree with his policies or with his governance strategy. So the president can do that at any point in time. However, the president, in doing so, must do so within the remit of law, and all appointments made must find expression within the confines of law. Now, the question then becomes, what law governs the appointment of ministers by the president? And what is the president supposed to do in order that that can find legitimate footing, in law? This is governed by Articles, 78, I believe, and 81A of the Constitution. So when there is vacancy, when the president finds that Elvis Butta is not performing well in Ministry A, the president can decide to reappoint or reassign rather Elvis Butta to Ministry B if he feels that his expertise will be needed in that particular ministry. The question then becomes, when a minister is reassigned, what should happen? Must the minister who has been reassigned be vetted? Or because the minister had already been vetted, he can go to that ministry and perform his function? This is a very fundamental question. For new ministers who have been appointed and for deputy ministers who have been appointed, I think that it is quite axiomatic that those have to be vetted. I don't know, and I think Honorable will be best placed to grant us the benefit of his knowledge in explaining to us whether or not, when a minister has performed, irrespective, a minister has been appointed, vetted, appointed and approved, irrespective of whether or not he's reassigned, he must still go through the vetting process, in Parliament. I don't know, of course, the law is quite clear on it, because if you read 78, it is quite clear, right? But have we operated through convention such that it's become an acceptable norm and practice in this country? Have we done that before? Do we have, in the past, have we experienced the situation where ministers who have been disappointed or their appointments terminated and reassigned to another ministry, have they gone through the vetting process, or they have been given a smooth sailing in respect of their appointment? So that is a fact or a matter that we must interrogate. Is it by law? Is it by convention? But the Constitution is quite clear that if a minister is reassigned, what it means is that his ministry or that position that which he occupied becomes vacant. And if it becomes vacant, it means that moving to a different ministry would mean that he's a new minister, and therefore he has to be vetted. So that is the basis upon which my brother Daffy Amarko went to court, right? Now let's look at the underpinning reasons for going to court, whether or not it is in respect of asking the court to give a true and proper interpretation of Article 78 and 81A of the Constitution, or it's because of the conduct of the president. Now, if you move on the tangent of whether or not it is asking the court or seeking audience with the court in order that the court can grant us some legal education or explanation or interpretation of the Constitution, that is fair enough. But if it is in respect of a reaction to the conduct of the president relative to how the Minister of Justice, has responded to the, to the president assenting his signature to the LGBTQ bill, that is also a matter that we have to interrogate. For me, we run a system where I believe that we have created some seeming enmity between all the arms of government. That because it is not our party in power, for instance, or because it is not our president, if the president conducts himself in a manner that we find disrespectful, we will retaliate. But who suffers? Who suffers? The Ghanaian people vote for people or vote for leaders to represent them, and by extension to act in ways which will, further enhance their aspirations and their dreams. So if I vote for a member of parliament, I expect the member of parliament to act in my best interest. If I vote for a president, I expect the president to act in my best interest. Now, the bill that was sent to the president for him to assent is a bill that has been agreed to by all Ghanaians. And I say agreed to by all Ghanaians, in relation to the representation of the people on the floor of parliament, because every member of parliament belongs to a constituency. So if you have 275 members of parliament, essentially you are talking about 275 constituencies, right, put together, present in parliament. So it is not the parliamentarians per se as individuals who are asking the president to do the needful. It is the Ghanaian people by extension who are asking the president to do the needful. And in that vein, I believe the president should have listened to the voices of conscience and should have listened to the voices of Ghanaians, and to take action which will, sit well with the Ghanaian people. So failure to do that would mean that you have disrespected the Ghanaian people. You have disrespected the Ghanaian people. You've treated the Ghanaian people with disdain. It means that you don't respect, you don't care. Now, Elvis explains to you what an injunction is and the effect it has on an action. And he explains to you that there are two schools of thought. Depending on which one best suits you, you may want to defer to one that sits with you, sits well with you, or defer to the other that does not sit well with you, right? So of course, in whichever way, it's still the same, the one and the same. Now, if an injunction, so for instance, so he explains that there's the executive, there's judiciary, there's legislature. All of them have their functions, all of them have their roles to play in any emerging democracy or any emerging economy, right? So Parliament has conducted its duty, dealt with its matter, the president has to assent. Can an injunction placed on that action stop the president from doing that which he's supposed to do? I have not seen any precedent that supports that. That Parliament, because in the scheme of affairs, Parliament is supposed to do something. Parliament is supposed to go through its own internal rules and to ensure that they abide by the rules to which they have. Now, what happens thereafter is a function of the executive. And the executive by law is mandated, or the president, really, let me just use the president, by law is mandated to append his signature to the bill which has been agreed to by all Ghanaians, by law. Failure to do that would mean gross disrespect to the Ghanaians. But I think I'm rehashing that, right? So, I'm sorry.
Which is great.
Yeah. So clearly, if someone has sent the matter to court and the determination has not been made. So for instance, let's assume without admitting that the matter travels for the next 3 years. What it means is that the work that has been done by Parliament will be poo-pooed, because I mean it is of no effect if the president has not appended his signature to it. So it will be it's outwardly will be poo-pooed. So that is the effect of the president's failure to do that which he's supposed to do, in order that we can ensure that the proper things is that if he and the Minister of Justice, you know, who by the way is a young man that I like, moves on the tangent of upholding the rule of law. Rule of law, and Honorable Minister Husseini will tell you, it's predicated on principles: predictability, certainty. Predictability, certainty. Now, if you are saying that because you want to uphold rule of law, you are advising the president not to append his signature to that which has been agreed to by all Ghanaians, what are you telling the Ghanaian people? Are you saying that on this particular occasion, the judiciary is dominant, as the judiciary is operating as a dominant force over the executive? That is the fundamental question. In respect of the e-levy, what happened? The matter was before a competent court of jurisdiction. There was an injunction placed on the president not to append his signature. What happened? The president expeditiously, with a thunderbolt speed, signed the e-levy bill into an act. Why? Because it served his purpose. Why? Because it served his interest. Is this to suggest that the president supports or does not support the bill which has been passed by Parliament? Is it because of monetary considerations? Is it because his hands are tied, for which reason he is unable to do his work as the president by respecting the good people of Ghana? Is it because of monetary considerations? Is it because IMF or the World Bank is saying that once you append your signature, the last tranche of the money will not come? Is it because of that? These are burning questions which require, proper answers from government. Is it because of that? Why is it that in one breath, e-levy, you were quick to sign, even though the matter was before a competent court of jurisdiction, but on this occasion, you have refused to sign? That's a matter.
An interference.
Absolutely.
That bridges what
yes.
we term as the
Do you understand? So you have set
principle.
Absolutely. You have set a principle. You have set a precedent. So one would have thought that yes, somebody has gone to court, but because you yourself, as the leader of government, set the principle by violating and defiling the court in signing the e-levy bill into an act, you would have still gone ahead to defile and violate the court in the interest of the Ghanaian people. So it begs so many burning questions. And I believe that we as Ghanaian people demand, we demand really proper explanation as to why the president conducted himself this way. Now, let me conclude on the flip side of the story. I mean, anybody can go to court to seek for constitutional interpretation. So I've explained to you the derivative effect, negative really effect of the president's action relative to the assent of the bill, right? Now, let's also find out whether or not my brother Daffy Amepo has acted well, and whether or not his action in court is one that portends, some positives, really, right? He goes to court and clear on the basis of the provisions of the Constitution. He goes to court for that. He says 78 and 81A are clear. So, on the basis of that, he is asking the court for an interlocutory injunction placed on Parliament. For the approval to restrain Parliament to approve the deputy ministers and the ministers who were vetted, and it's quite right. But really, beyond everything, what is his genuine intention? I mean, what's the intention? you get the point. And someone said that even the devil does not know the intention of man. But this one, even the devil knows the intention of my brother Daffy Amepo. Yes, yes, it's important to get constitutional interpretation on these matters. But also, let's look at why he went. And the explanation, loudly so, given by the Speaker of Parliament is to the effect that if the president is undermining our independence, then we will also tell the president that we are independent enough to undermine his. That's the basis of this action. That is the basis. It is trite. That's the basis of this action. That if the president has glaringly disrespected Parliament as an independent arm of government, then nothing prevents us. We are not stopped from demonstrating to the president that yes, we are independent and we also wield powers which we can exercise when it is necessary. And that is what has happened. Because when you read, I mean, of course, I mean, he explains it. But the question is, would Honorable Daffy Amepo have gone to court if the president has assented to the LGBTQ bill? The answer, to the best of my knowledge, is no. So I do not want us to, act in ways which, in the final analysis, will affect the smooth running of this country and will affect the development that the Ghanaian people need. Ultimately, it's the Ghanaian people that we have to think about when we are taking steps or we are taking some action. And I want to believe that, Parliament, or maybe the Speaker of Parliament and the President must meet somehow and deliberate Jojo and see if they can resolve this matter without any further delay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, So before I proceed to Honorable Inusa, I'll do a few messages. I beg to differ from Mr. Elvis Bottas' position that Parliament acted in bad faith by deciding that it won't approve any nominations by the President. In any case, what stops the President from signing the bill passed by the legislative arm of government? Look, the Speaker was right and firm. He has the backing of the general public, and as it is now, a President is set, and that's the way it should be. Tombawo Charles from Doma Ahenkro. No, but you said that two wrongs do not make a right. You disagreed with Parliament's position now, and of course with the President's position too as well. So that's what I believe the viewer is talking about, yes.
Situated in good context.
Yeah, this one says, panel members, good morning. I'm asking you, are we under military rule or under civilian rule? If you see the letter written by Nana Asante Bediye to the Parliament of Ghana, it shows that Ghana is being governed under military rule. Or Ghana Pani, the laws of this country are not working under Kufuor Bawumia administration. From Amos in Asin Fosu. This one here says, my name is Bekpie from Obuasi. Just the way the President hurriedly signed the e-levy bill, so must he sign this. Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for doing the watching. Good morning. My name is Anthony, following you live from Libya. In my opinion, looking at what is going on in my country, Ghana, right now, shows that Ghana is not yet ready to be ruled by democracy. We need a military rule. Okay, thank you, and thank you for doing the watching all the way from Liberia. There's one here. Libya, not Liberia. Greetings to all your panelists with you today, especially Elvis. Please tell him I need his contact. I'm Zakaria Zibilila from Tamale. Zibilila, right. Thank you. Bless. Okay. Bless, I am enjoying the development between the executive arm of government and Parliament of Ghana. Boot for boot, what a showdown. Sami from Taiman, Oyarefa. Thank you, Sami, for your message. Right, on that note, I'll proceed to Honorable Inusa will take a final bite on this particular subject matter.
Well, and to say good morning to you, Bless, and my nephew and friend, brother Elvis, and colleague KOD, the newly minted lawyer. Now, it is important for us to say that never in the history of the Fourth Republic has any president shown such gross disrespect to Parliament than Nana Akufo-Addo. Never. Not even Rawlings. It is also fair to say that Nana Akufo-Addo is the only president under the Fourth Republic whose act has been declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of Ghana in the case of Dumblevo. So, one, there is precedent that Nana Akufo-Addo has acted unconstitutionally before. Okay? Now, let's situate everything in context. It is important for you to know, and Elvis has alluded to it, and those students who did history, and particularly government, will have come across a term which is known as constitutionalism. Yeah. Simply because of the principles and doctrine of separation of powers, which simply postulates that different branches of government are created and vested with certain powers. And for us to have responsible, accountable governance, those institutions must operate within their powers. And these powers must have been created by a constitution. Now, it is also important for us to understand that the system of governance in the presidential or the presidential system of governance is different from the parliamentary system of governance, and especially very different from the Westminster type of government. Because you can have a prime ministerial or a parliamentary system of government where there is an existing constitution regulating the exercise of powers of the various offices created. In the case of the Westminster system, there is no existing document called a constitution which delineates the powers. So, if you take experiences from Britain and import it into Ghana, you might be making a big mistake. And I see this argument coming up in the case of whether an interlocutory injunction will restrain the hand or not. Okay? That is precisely because in the UK, the courts and parliaments, the UK parliament, democracy is the parliament. Okay? And so, how do you check the parliament? It is the courts. Okay? When the parliament passes a law or a regulation, the queen or the king cannot refuse to assent. Okay? And so, where the court says, no, parliament cannot do what it is purporting to do, it ends there. It's a different arrangement altogether in Ghana. We have a living constitution called the 1992 Constitution. And what does the 1992 Constitution says? Article 93(2). Legislative authority, and for the purpose of all our listeners, legislative authority simply means the power to make laws. Legislative authority is vested in Parliament and which shall be exercised subject to the provisions of the Constitution.
Not to the provisions of the executive.
You get it? And so if the Constitution says this, and Elvis, who is learning the law, and KOD, who is a lawyer, knows that when the Constitution says subject to the Constitution, you have to go to other provisions of the Constitution to see how that power is exercised. So you go to Article 106, which delineates the steps. So we call it the procedural limitation on the exercise of power of the Parliament to pass laws. It means simply, if Parliament fails, refuses, or neglects to follow the procedure captured in Article 106, Parliament will be engaging in an unconstitutionality. That is when you can say there is a process irregularity with the way Parliament has gone about making the law. And then you can go to court and say, well, Parliament is not complying with the very dictates of the Constitution. Now, what does Article 1067 say? And KOD, that is where my confusion starts. And that clearly shows that the president is rolling back our democracy. Is rolling back our democracy in ways that clearly is weakening the institutions set up to ensure that the promise of the Constitution to deliver prosperity and equality of opportunity is never met. Little wonder that we are poor. Little wonder that we are bankrupt. Because the president's actions, and you can see part of his actions of rolling back democracy in the activities of the central bank. Because the president has sworn his oath of office to uphold the constitutions and the laws of the country. The laws of the country say you can't print money more than 5% of the previous year's revenue. The president is a lawyer. He sees with this law. He deliberately ignores the law and the Bank of Ghana governor and even supports him. And you have a vice president who is running for the office of president actually praising him, heaping praises when there has been a flagrant violation. Now, Article 1067 says that where a bill is presented to Parliament, a bill having been passed by Parliament is presented to the Speaker, to the President, he shall, underline, signify his assent to the bill or his refusal within 7 days. So there is a discretion. There is no compulsion in Article 1067. There's no compulsion. There is no, that is why, again, the suit by Richard Sky is lame. And I won't go into further details. Why? He's saying that to restrain the president from assenting to the bill. But who says that the president is going to assent to the bill? Because Article 1067 doesn't say that the president must.
He must.
You get it? So you have shot in the air at no target. That's what he has done. He shot in the air at no target.
That may be a warning shot.
Well, now, so, and now I've said consistently that these presidents before Nana Akufo-Addo did not breach the Constitution or create such constitutional errors and friction between the various arms of government precisely because they had advisors. Article 106.8 says, so first, Article 107 says, you shall signify whether you will assent or not assent within 7 days. So you have the first 7 days. Free, given to you by the Constitution. Free.
The first 7 days.
Yes, when the bill is presented. Then, within 14 days, if you decide, if you refuse to, if your decision is to refuse to sign, within 14 days you must send a memorandum to Parliament, to the Speaker.
Okay, stating why you are not.
Stating why you are not. And if you have objection to some of the provisions in the bill, you state those objections and the provisions and offer recommendations. 14 days, so 14 plus 7.
21.
Under this, the same article 1068, you can also refer the bill to the Council of State. And where the bill is not of an urgent nature, the Council of State has 30 days within which to bring out their report on the bill. So if I were advising my president, I would say, refer it to the Council of State. So I have 7 days, I have 14 days, 21 days, and I have 30 days. How many days?
51 days.
51 days. Before the Council of, then you would have insulated the office of the president from this ridicule that Nana Asante Bediako has exposed the president to. The president was simply written to Parliament that I have transferred the bill
to the Council of State.
Isn't it? So they are not thinking. That is why we have such an incompetent government that is performing abysmally poorly. They are not thinking. Or they have been blinded by the arrogance of power. Because this is needless. You know why it's so needless? Look at what happened in Parliament yesterday. What Speaker did by saying that the vetting of the ministers have been put on hold was to demonstrate the absurdity of what the Speaker, what the President had done.
Do me, I do you.
The absurdity, because you see, and you have said it. So if you say that, well, the president or government or any arm of government is considering a policy, and you think that the policy, you cited a very good example, fiscal policy, I think businessmen will be adversely impacted by they run to court and file an injunction to restrain Parliament from proceeding or forwarding such a tax policy to the president and couple it with an interlocutory injunction. So what happens? You frustrate the performance of government. It's so dangerous that no right-thinking person should agree to this development. I mean, or to support this development. It's so dangerous. As a constitutional lawyer and as a student of politics, it's so dangerous that it's not funny. That is how tyrants emerge. That is how dictators emerge. People talk about Nkrumah. He did not do anything without recourse to the law. But the law was such that he could exploit it to his advantage. He did not do anything with the law. But he's been painted as a dictator, as a tyrant. So the fact that you have laws does not insulate you from dictatorship and tyranny unless you take concrete steps to ensure that it doesn't happen. And Nana Akufo-Addo, let me tell you my personal experience. In 2006, I came to Parliament through a by-election. The by-election was consequent upon the resignation of Sani Wayo from NDC and the crossing of the carpet. Within that time, Ghana was again in the throes of debates on marital rape, the domestic violence bill. You remember? Or maybe you were still in the...
2006.
You don't remember?
I was 16 years old.
Okay. So let me give you the story. Ghana was in the throes of debate whether or not to criminalize lack of consent amongst couples in a marriage situation. The churches and then the other religious groups rose up in arms against the inclusion of that in the domestic violence bill. Meanwhile, the feminist lobby was so strong that that provision was included. The bill was transmitted to President Kufuor for signature, for assent. President Kufuor refused to assent. and wrote a memorandum pursuant to the provisions of the Constitution, telling Parliament why he could not assent. When Parliament received it, Begina Sechi Hughes was the Speaker. Parliament read it out and said, well, the President Kufuor had objected to the inclusion of that particular provision in the bill. And he didn't suggest amendment. President Kufuor did not suggest amendments. That was the time I came into Parliament. So I was, when the bill was referred to the Gender Committee, that time there's a woman who was the Minister for Forestry. What, I don't know why I forgot her name. But then she had been reshuffled out of that ministry and then made the chairperson of the Gender Committee. So I was passing when she invited me, and when I came to Parliament, everybody knew that I was coming from the courts. So she invited lawyer. We have this problem. President Kufuor says he won't sign the bill because we have included this provision in the bill. So I took the bill. I didn't even sit down. I took the bill, sharp from courts practice, looked at the formulation of the bill, invoked my understanding of conjugal rights in common law and why that is a right in common law, because in common law you don't need consent. When you marry, you don't need consent to you don't need consent. Then I looked at the requirements of present day, where you have to deal with the chauvinism, male chauvinism, and all those things, and juggled the provisions of that particular bill, that particular provision or clause together, and produced a formulation which was acceptable to the committee. The meeting ended.
The meeting ended.
The meeting ended. When I when I gave them a formulation, and President Kufuor was so satisfied with that formulation. So that formulation in the domestic violence bill is my formulation. But only one person saw that I had done a very good trick, and that's the late Ndebugri, who said that I had not substantially moved from the original position
of the initial law,
but that I had achieved the purpose because President Kufuor was satisfied. That is what Democrats do. That's why I had occasion in the past, when I had occasion to meet President Kufuor, I told him that I disagreed with so many of his policies, but I respected him for one thing. He knew what he was about. Well, in a country where the president doesn't know what he's about. Nana Akufo-Addo doesn't simply know what he's about.
A critical issue, maybe I'll call it a question. From all the education you have given, should I just come in now? So then it means that the issue or the constitutionality of the matter and the position of the president pursuant to the provisions of the constitution is to either assent within 7 days or attach a memo
or refuse to
why he's not assenting
within 21 days,
even before the option of going to the Council of States for 30 days.
Yes.
Now then it means that there is no legal basis for anyone to seek to stop the transmission of the bill. But if you look at the letter currently issued to Parliament, the Executive Secretary to the President is actually stopping Parliament from even transmitting the bill to the President.
Apart from that, my brother, there is no procedural stipulation in the law which vests so I say, on what authority, and the Attorney General says, well, the Parliament should abide the decision of by not transmitting. He didn't say by not transmitting. Okay, he formulated it so nicely.
Actually, the Attorney General says he's advising that the President should hold on
to the. So
it means that you can transmit the bill, but don't sign.
But I mean, it doesn't make sense because the explanation Honorable has given is to the effect that look, you have options.
You have options.
You can either sign
Yeah.
Or not
Give
start.
a reason.
or transmit it to
Councillors.
councils. And then you can really say that this is their recommendation, on the basis of which you are refusing.
So that you exonerate yourself from it. That's the
I mean, this is.
I think it's just,
Yeah, you know, so-
he doesn't just want to sign it.
No.
And it's not bold enough to come out to say that.
No, it's not.
the worst form of doing it. So I will not agree that he doesn't just want to sign it.
explanation.
But there
Explanation.
is a way to afford 51 days for yourself, and when you really don't even sign, but the state will not blame you, will not blame the executive.
Exactly, yeah.
You will simply give Parliament work on paper to do again. That on this basis, Council of State says ABC, and I'm acting on that.
You bring yourself and say we shouldn't condemn you.
I think it's quite conclusive. And
You
that's
bring
why-
yourself
It's quite
and you say-
conclusive.
and then lastly, let me
Yeah,
finish.
Honorable, go ahead.
Tell me, as lawyers, the Constitution has spelled out the procedure for passing a law, for transmitting the law, has given the president rights and all that in dealing. This is captured in the Constitution. Tell me which court will say that, well, even though you have provisions in the Constitution spelling out the procedure and which enjoins every person who is, to carry out functions under that law to comply with that procedure. Tell me which court will say, well, we are injuncting you don't comply with the constitutional provision. Tell me which court, which in effect will say we are holding the constitutional provisions in abeyance. And I will tantamount to usurpation of the Constitution. That's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm going to say.
Then it means that the Constitution has been usurped.
Even in principle,
Yes, you understand?
on many occasions, the courts have refrained from going into matters which are political.
Yes.
And this is a clear example of political question. Clear example.
So you see,
But I think that, and Honorable may agree with me, that there's only one fundamental reason for all of these shenanigans. And that is to the effect that if we sign this bill, we may not get money. That's the whole
No,
point.
but I'm saying that
You see, that's the
I don't
whole
even
point.
want to go there.
No, but let's go there.
No.
I will go there.
Kirodi.
You see,
Kirodi. There are other things.
So just say you won't sign it.
No. Politics is not played that way. Leadership of a country is not governed that way. You need to carry the people along with you. You need trust. You need honesty. You need transparency. You need the people to believe in you. Okay? You need the people to sympathize with you and empathize with you. But that's about governing a country. I mean, not all will agree with you, but they will laud your efforts. Okay? You have a country that is almost divided on the human, sexual rights and family values bill. So there are some people who definitely will condemn your actions. There are people who will laud your actions. As a leader, a president, don't you think that you have a responsibility, indeed a duty, an obligation to carry those who are against the bill with you?
Oh, no.
Don't you think you need to convince the people who are for it that you are doing everything to ensure that when the bill is finally ratified or assented to, it will meet the purpose for which it has
You see,
come.
Honorable, the reason why I'm saying it's monetary or financial is because the signs were clear on the wall. From the very outset, if you recall, that there were discussions about how impactful the bill will have on the country's finances. Do you remember?
Well,
It came up.
It came up. I don't remember.
The truth, they pay tax.
No, what I'm saying is that
They don't pay tax.
you see, it came up. It was a subject matter of debate. That because of our negotiations with IMF and all of that,
And the issue of
exactly,
foreign
it
direct
came up.
investment.
And you see,
But then,
the conversation was in respect of protecting the sanctity of human rights. That was the whole conversation. So I mean, I still stand by the position that this is more financial than logic and law. You understand?
Right.
It's more financial than logic and law. Because the president knows what Honorable is saying. I think that the Constitution is quite plain and simple. And in matters where the provisions are clear, it leaves very little doubt in the minds of anybody as to the interpretation of same. You don't even have to go to court to seek for any interpretation if it is clear. You see, that is why the court will tell you that we don't make laws. And we only interpret laws that are ambiguous. This one is unambiguous.
But Nana Akufo-Addo himself
1067
hasn't even read his father's judgments.
It's clear.
His father sitting in court in the Mosi and Bajina case.
Mosi and Bajina case. Yeah.
Has said that
Yes.
where a statute imposes a duty on you,
you
cannot, nobody can prevent you from working.
Yes, you see,
Right.
And in this case, and I like the legal education Honorable has, presented us with this morning, and has explained to us the provisions in the Constitution, which provision deals clearly with how the president must conduct himself in matters such as this. It's quite clear.
And everybody also said that even the Council of State or the president returns the bill, and the parliament still wants to pass the bill because they have the sole making power.
Yeah, legislative authority.
They can only compel the president to assent to the bill if they pass the bill with 2/3 majority.
Yes. So I mean,
So 106 have not been exhausted.
So I mean, that's what I'm saying. Perhaps there are some other
Political, economic reasons.
yes, extrinsic factors.
No, that is just needless.
I think that
attention.
I think by then too,
Needless.
Parliament is thoroughly convinced that if it gets to that point, they are going
They
to
will
get
get
the 2/3 majority.
Don't be sure about that. But you see, let's conclude.
Economy on this.
So don't talk about that. What I'm saying is that, did you read Asante?
I've not read it.
You've not read the letter.
Have you read? Who read the last paragraph? The Constitution says that when Parliament passes the law, it is the clerk that makes the transmission.
Transmission, yeah.
So, and the clerk has been named in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Executive Secretary to the President, who is not known to the Constitution, says that the creature of the Constitution should cease and desist from transmitting.
Yeah, but that is the point I was raising. What is the constitutionality
of that?
it? And in this whole issue, even from the procedural perspective, okay, there is no issue about transmission. Transmission must happen. It is a different thing from whether or not the president assents.
But you see,
there are two different situations.
my issue, and
So for me, the tone.
I won't comment on this again after this. My issue is that if we are not careful, and if we continue on this trajectory, we may create a system where it will be practically impossible to reconcile the legislature and the executive. Bear in mind that you see this.
How will you reconcile them when there is so much interference?
That's the point I'm trying to establish. You see, and we are setting a precedent which will come back to harm us. And that is why Honorable Alban Bagbin was quite clear. He said that, look, the president has set a precedent to which we are following. And that the president, by this similar act, is inviting all other Ghanaians to injunct the processes of parliament if it doesn't find expression in their needs and demands. Yes.
Right.
So it is a huge problem, and we have to address it now before it degenerates. Now.
Progressive build on Kakisto.
Is it not? It's crazy.
This Kakisto. Where you have the lowest, the cheapest of intellect in the ruling class. This is what happens. Because clearly you realize that there is no justice, done to an exhaustive learning of procedural and constitutional requirement on this matter. Else we could have had a better letter, a better tone, and a better conversation. Yes.
Better outcome.
Yeah.
Right. I'll read a few messages before we proceed to our next topic for conversation. Bless. The jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in relation to actions of Parliament can only be invoked when there is a full-grown law passed by Parliament which frowns on good governance, rule of law, or an abuse of processes. In this case, there is absolutely no law that has been assented to by the President. The Supreme Court cannot act on mere bills when even the bills has not been presented to the president. This one is coming from Ambassador Sampiale, who is doing the watching.
That was my first argument.
Yes.
I told you that the third summary under parliamentary supremacy is that they can only act on what? Acts of parliament, not bills of parliament. So, clearly.
The Constitution says so. I mean, 2-1. So, what Sampiale is saying is that the bill has not matured.
Yes.
And so it's preemptive.
You have gone to name a child in the womb.
And the Supreme Court has no speculative jurisdiction. You know that.
They have no speculative.
Right. Ibrahim Mubarak.
That's what you said. Just to store the process.
Yes.
I mean, this
Ibrahim Mubarak says, greetings to all your panel. Bless. Our president is a hypocrite. When the e-levy was passed away in this country, when minority injuncted the process, yet he went ahead and signed it. Why can't he signed this one? Mubarak from Tamale Airport. Francis Esia Wonam says, if two wrongs do not make a right, then what happens to the first wrong? Good morning, bless. KOD Alaji Yunus Husseini and my brother Elvis Bota. KOD, I hope you see the reason why I'm always happy seeing you perform as a panelist on your own show. And all because as a host, there is always very little to speak about. But as a panelist, beyond space is the limit. Well done, QD, for a good delivery this morning. This one came from Abdul Razak Mahama. This one here. He's been I can't take my boss's show, so I intentionally left out.
No. I forgot that country.
Odikro Nana Kobinata says the NDC and NPP, by the current actions and respective performance over the years, both of them sending the country to the IMF and giving us doom so in the last 10 years, giving Ghanaians more reasons to vote for an independent president to form the government of national unity, like what is going on in Benin. Change is coming. Odikro Nana Kobina Ata. Thank you so much for your message. Ken Williams says, hi. Workers in Ghana have been too lenient with this wasteful family and friends president who is flying in luxury jets and having kinky parties with his overbloated government, while professors, doctors, and teachers live like slaves in their own government. Workers must wake up and resist oppressive rule, dictatorship, nuisance taxes, abuse of power, apartheid policies, untold economic hardships, and looting of their pension funds under the guise of haircuts. Cry, the beloved country. Ken Williams is asking why the host asks for text messages but fails to read them. I think I've read this one. Please pay more attention to the text messages in order to get the true feedback of your viewers. Thank you so much, Ken Williams. Frederick Tete says, nice work, bro. John Afo, good morning, Koku. Please, you people must stop being romantic with the president by touting him to be a lawyer. If he's truly a lawyer, who were his mates and where are his certificates? Right. On this note, we'll proceed to the next topic. We have just 20 minutes more. Individuals, businesses to have tax amnesty in 2025. Dr. Bawumia reaffirms. So the Vice President at a stakeholders interaction with members of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Accra on Wednesday stressed on the need for a new tax regime to aid his vision of carrying the private sector along under his government. Our tax system has been the same since independence and has not helped us, so we have to change it, Dr. Bawumia said. Because we do not have so much time, we'll get straight into the conversation. But even before that, the president also had some choice words for the Ghana Revenue Authority. According to him, they are harassing businesses over unrealistic targets. Honorable Yunusa, starting with you on this one.
Well, I think that Bawumia is clearly being a desperate man. And in his desperation, he even forgets many things. He says there's going to be a new, and I've watched the video, I mean, when he was speaking to the businessmen, Ghana Chamber of Commerce. He said there's going to be a new regime, a new start, a fresh start in 2025. And that companies will not be paying taxes, or there will be an amnesty for companies who have not paid taxes. Mr. Bawumia, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, I think that you're not looking beyond your shoulder when you are speaking, and Ghanaians clearly will not be enthused if listening to you and realizing that what you are saying is actually part of the regime that is available. Now, in Ghana today, the MPP have passed two critical laws. The first was the Tax Amnesty Act, which was passed in 2017. And that act is numbered 995. So what Bawumia was telling the Ghana Chamber of Commerce is actually law in Ghana, that where there are defaulters, tax defaulters, and those tax defaulters cannot by any stretch of imagination pay those taxes, the tax authorities can grant them an amnesty. Can grant them, so it's there. Now, in granting them an amnesty, that doesn't mean that they won't pay tax at all. They might say, pay 1/3 of your taxes in lieu of the total tax burden that has been imposed on you. And you know, it springs from the common law principle of accepting a small debt in satisfaction of a larger debt. That, you owe me a lot, but you can't pay. But can you pay me this amount? And that will stand for the total amount of money that you owe me. He says that's a common law position. And that's found expression in tax law. So, Dr. Bawumia, there's already a law like that. Now, where even an amnesty has been granted under the 2017 law, and then the taxpayer fails, neglects, or refuses to pay, a penalty is imposed on the existing debt. And that debt will continue to raise interest as well. You have the penalty and the interest. In 2021, the government said, these people cannot owe. We've imposed penalty and interest, they are not paying. So let's go and do a law that allows us to do what? To waive the penalties and the interest. And in 2001, under Ken Ofori-Atta, Act 1065 was passed, a Penalty and Interest Waivers Act. Now that gave a limited window for people who could not pay and for whom penalties have been imposed. Now, that bill in the same 2021 was amended by the extension of the time, because they gave them a small window and those people could not still comply. So they extended it by amending the act to Act 1073. So there is a legal regime already. And I don't think that, and that's why those who were listening to him, and when I listened to the video, someone emitted a very surprised sound. Because he knew, and all those who were sitting there and being businessmen know that regime already exists. It's an ongoing, an existing regime. But guess who is talking? It is Dr. Bawumia who told us that he was coming to move this country from what? Taxation to production. Today, can you count the raft of taxes that were imposed on us? It's the same Bawumia who told us that under his regime, no village with a toilet facility. Have you forgotten that distance? And those Kaya people were provided with hostels. Yeah? And that the Cape Coast will have an airport. Or is it a seaport? The same Baumia who told us that in the Muslim communities there will be 16 model schools. In each, why are you laughing? I'm just counting the litany of promises that he has given. But you say we don't have time. Always beware of the Carthaginians and the gifts they bring, because you will pay for them. You remember the free water? You remember the free electricity? When COVID finally abated, we were told to pay. When we asked them, who asked them to give us free water, they said, well, how was government going to pay for the free water? So, businessmen, if you listen to Dr. Bawumia and take what he has taken for granted and believe in what he's saying, in the unlikely event, because John Mahama is going to win the elections, in the unlikely event that he comes, you will pay through your nose, because he has no credible record of fulfilling his promises. Thank you.
Thank you. Elvis Bota.
Yes, taking it from the grounds of the lack of credibility in public records for continuity, I think that it is important to state that I have always maintained that if there is the least description of the situation we find ourselves in, is to say that Ghana has found itself between the rock and the hard place. I find it, honestly, I find it very difficult to be able to distinguish any other person of the lack of credibility in terms of fulfilling promises from the, backdrop of Mr. Mahama, who happens to be the alternative under consideration here. You see, the same thing applies to the issue of desperation attributed to the vice president as being the basis for the promise. You would then realize that the alternative, which is Mr. Mahama, having ruled before, I mean, we've actually seen him, and Uncle will agree we have seen him. Having seen him, you also agree that his current campaign positions, surprisingly, is not strategic enough to carve out a message of victory. It is rather one that is recycling his old attitude and the worst of it contradicting, his own principles of the past. Should that not also spark off some credibility or desperation in his attempt to come back? I've always told you the NDC is not making good use of the chances of penalty for victory. And I maintain that they consistently refuse to be very analytical and logical about what to take advantage of and what not to take advantage of. I will leave it there and say that I am then compelled under the circumstances to think that in analyzing the two, at least, you see, a crafty liar with an enticing message might actually be better in leadership, because leadership is about vision, than a confused man. I don't know if you are getting the general philosophy. Now, zeroing in into the situation, my uncle have established already that the issue of tax amnesty is one that is provided for by law already. Is there anything wrong with a man coming to rehash that if I become president, I will activate the forces of the law to put into practice an amnesty scheme or an amnesty provision that is already in the law? I will not go into the economic technicalities of it, but to say that, do we not also think that under the current economic hardship, truly speaking, the private sector really needs that kind of a leverage? And sometimes, if you owe people, or if you owe a person a huge tax, I mean, someone a huge debt, the person comes back to say, pay a smaller debt, okay, in lieu of the bigger debt. Don't you think that sometimes people really notice that they are the cause of the heavy indebtedness in others? So if Bawumia thinks that certain promises, certain policies, certain actions that were promised didn't happen. We've come back to promises. It didn't happen. Subject to which businesses are in hot water, subject to which the economy, is not providing the kind of expected stimuli to the private sector to thrive. And so a good point to start with, because he maintained that, look, this is for us to start afresh in the midst of our difficulties. It means that the vice president have recognized that we are in very difficult times. So the first step in making sure that we begin to give some form of space for businesses to be able to breathe while sustainable solutions are thought through on the basis of forgiving certain levels of taxes. I think that it is a matter we cannot entirely, for now, sweep under the carpet unless the alternative seeking to come in have a superior argument to advance through their presidential candidate. Then we are convinced it is their vision. But we are tired with the lack of specific vision. And if you look at it, it is only intelligent people like my uncle who are able to advance these kind of arguments that gives room for a lot of absorption. But the entire NDC machinery is actually unable to do that. So then, how do you convince voters that in the absence of a vision from the presidential candidate, Mr. Mahama, an eloquent and clear vision, and the inability of communicators to speak to that vision, there will be any improvement if they come back to power?
Right, thank you very much.
So for me, this is where the scary nature of the alternative comes in. But we hope that in the future, we'll listen to more better debates for a choice.
Right, thank you, Elvis. Kwame.
Right. I think that it is very uncharitable to describe His Excellency, the former president, as confused.
But who did?
You did. And it is very uncharitable to describe his campaign as that which we've already experienced. That is the same old former President John Dramani Mahama. I think that it is very uncharitable to describe him in such a manner and to describe his campaign with such, characterization. I think that, with the greatest of respect to my brother Elvis, it is uncharitable. Now, it is important to state that, look, who created the mess? Why are we here? Why is the vice president making promises? Why? You created this economic malaise. You created this economic labyrinth. You are the reason why businesses are struggling to breathe. You are the reason why businesses have collapsed. You are the reason why businesses are unable to pay taxes.
But this happened and
then you come back to say that when I come, I will ensure the strict adherence of a provision which exists in order that I can give you amnesty. If the economy was buoyant, if the economy was on a sound footing, I am not sure, without more, that the vice president will go around making promises again. In any event, why not now? Why later? In any event, why not now? Why later? I think that the president, in his State of the Nation address, was as eloquent and as clear when he intimated without equivocation that it is only an unwise president who will not take counsel from his advisors. Who is Dr. Bawumia in this administration? Is he not the vice president? Is he not with the economic management team? Is he not an advisor to the president? So by extension, the president is telling you that yes, Dr. Bawumia provided counsel. Even though I am saying that I am solely responsible for the economic, labyrinth in which we find ourselves, I am not alone in this boat. In this particular boat, we sailed together. Me and the vice president, we sailed together. And on the basis of that, the vice president invariably cannot extricate himself from the economic, conundrum in which we find ourselves. So that's simplicity. So, when you go around
making promises, unfounded promises, promises without justification, promises without any basis whatsoever. I find it very disrespectful. I find it very despicable. I find it very degrading and disregarding of the Ghanaian people. Why do you go about making promises again? When you were the person who trumpeted and indicated to the Ghanaian people in 2016 and in 2020, you were touting the prowess of Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and you were promoting yourself as the messiah of the country's economy, as the person who were going to take us from taxation to production. He led that discussion. So what has changed now? Is it because he wants to be president? Is it because he thinks the Ghanaian people are fools? Is it because he thinks that we have short memory? Is it because he thinks that we cannot remember the promises that they made to the Ghanaian people of Ghana, and the fact that they have flagrantly disrespected the Ghanaian people of Ghana?
And like that,
so you cannot at all come back to the Ghanaian people, okay, whose businesses you have collapsed, to come and make other promises. Do you know how much we pay in taxes now? Yes. Do you know how much we pay in taxes now? Do you know that these same businesses that he visited are engaged in importation of their products or produce into the country? Do you know how much they pay in tax at the ports? Do you know how much they pay in VAT? Do you know that we still pay COVID-19 tax? Do you know that? Do you know that?
Why shouldn't we pay?
Who put those taxes there? Who put those taxes there? It's very disrespectful to the Ghanaian people. And look. And I'm very upset. Because where we are going, we need to build a country where we can have confidence in our leaders.
And this is a man who had the combined brains
of the
IMF and the World Bank.
But that brings us to the confusion.
Let me make my point. Is it Amanda was speaking?
Amanda was the one who is even.
Amanda was speaking.
So at the end of the day, you put yourself back in the same judgment.
Elvis, don't do that.
Which minute? He doesn't have any minute. He doesn't have any minute.
Elvis, let's not do that.
Because my brother has been caught up.
Elvis,
Mama is within the same framework you have just established.
Elvis, why are you doing this?
No, but why are you doing what you are doing? Because you're given the opportunity, okay?
Elvis,
I want to talk of businesses and their collapse. What happened under 4 years?
Elvis, with the
you can't even make that comparison.
With the grace of respect, why are you doing this?
No, but where is the respect?
No, let me make my point.
Let him conclude.
Let me make my point.
With my 1 minute with you.
You see, so it will be an unwise presidential candidate.
Unwise?
Yes.
Or unwise?
Who will go making promises to which he knows he cannot fulfill, because it is demonstrable. There is evidence that this is the man who said he was going to provide $1 million per constituency.
Yeah.
He spearheaded that conversation. Till today, as we speak today, Common Fund is not even going. It is in arrest. Is he not the one who superintended over the haircut? Is he not the one? Is he not the one who superintended over hold on, no, please. Elvis, you are truncating my chain of thought. I don't like that.
1 minute.
I don't like that.
Our time is even up.
This was what I was preventing. You see, no. You know I don't like this. And KOD knows I don't like it. So you don't leave us at a point, okay, of a meeting of his that are rebuttable without an opportunity to be able to do. Okay, and I'm saying that let's go back to challenge.
Go back to.
Okay, let me between Mahama and Nego. And I don't know why I said he's confused.
Let me conclude. You see,
what are you talking about?
You have a leader in former President John Dramani Mahama, who on so many occasions and in plain language has admitted that yes, he is a man with flaws. He has admitted on several occasions that yes, there are in some sectors I could have performed better. With the benefit of hindsight, now I know how to address those challenges. Indeed, this is the man who made a promise. Hold on, please. With respect, obviously, I don't want to get upset. This is a man who, yes, with you. Because we're talking about Ghana.
You can be upset with me.
We are talking about Ghana.
Be upset.
And when we are talking about Ghana, I don't want any intervention because it is about the future of this country.
No,
it is about the future. You have how many children? You have 3. we have to speak.
Please,
so
don't
that,
come my children. It is on my death.
So
you are telling your
Oh, you know all my children on my death day.
So respectfully, let me just conclude on this.
Kwame, you are telling on dangerous.
No, I'm not.
I'm telling you.
Because he might have more than 3.
For you know, my wife is a real
What am I to right? Please. But you see, let's be candid with the Ghanaian people.
Yes.
Enough of these rhetorics. And I've stated that look, it is not enough for you to make promises. You have to make the promises backed by data and backed by evidence. So Dr. Bawumia should come again. Yes, they may be well organized, and admittedly so. Okay, in terms of how they are doing their political campaigning. And in political communication, strategy is the number one of all the strategies, of all the activities that you may want to embark upon. Yes, admittedly so. But when we want to pull parity with who has performed creditably well, okay, and who, even as vice president, even comparing vice presidents, it is admitted, it is quite clear that President John Dramani Mahama was a far better vice president than Bawumia, because he didn't come and make promises to you. He did not herald any conversation. He played his role as a vice president. You acted as though you were the president of the Republic of Ghana. Do you understand what I'm saying? The president,
Gordon largely on by the
president John Dramani Mahama. In conclusion.
And do you know the speech he has given so far?
In conclusion.
You have to give me 10 minutes.
Former President Mahama.
You've been concluding for 4 times now.
Former President Mahama put his presidency on the line. Do you know why I'm saying this? He said, listen, I will fix Dumso. That was a statement, a call to action. That was a statement, an emphatic statement.
Made when?
I will put my presidency on the line.
In 2015.
That I will fix Dumso.
And for 3 years.
And he indicated that I came to meet it. It's a generational issue. I came to meet it. However, I will fix it. Compare that to Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who said that I put my presidency on the line. I will fix Galamsey. I raise my case.
Thank you very much. Bless, in our quest to get our country transformed, the questions we must ask ourselves is this. In a world where unity breeds progress and inclusivity fosters prosperity, can we afford to cling to the outdated paradigm of winner-takes-all politics? Or is it time to embrace a new era of collaboration, equity, and national unity? The answer lies not only in our hands, but in the collective will of every Ghanaian who dares to dream of a brighter tomorrow. Remove all the party colors of those who want to lead us and look at them as individuals, and you can clearly see that Alan Kyerematen is our best bet. On this note, we conclude today's edition of the Morning Show. It's been a very, very educative, edition.
When you do this, you don't help much. Where's the time you promised me?
Elvis Bota. Thank you, Honorable Yunus.
No, I won't come here on Thursday. Where's the time you promised me?
Come here next week. I can promise you that. Bye-bye.
You gave this man the opportunity to win.